That's a good idea.
I don't know how many of them I have right through the Too late. Too late, don't even.
All right. Right, they
Haven't done anything. Because are you aware that the higher you go on these two, the more feedback you will get?
I am not, but I did get a lot of feedback when I had this external monitor.
Yeah, but that's even, I had a plug, I was bringing it around just to plug into the front of this one, so it was on the same circuit.
All
And
right,
it's feeling good.
well, they were good.
I'm sitting over here, give me a shot of cream.
All right.
Okay, go away from that. You recording at full screen. Might go to the right. Say yeah. Go to the right. Go to the right. Go to the right. Go to the right. There's a square there. No.
I thought I heard that. Yeah. I didn't know if you
It says participants. Is that what you want? What? Who else is on there? You and Patty Chapman.
I'll be out of here.
This says merge to meeting window. Is that what you want to do? I don't know. No. You go back.
I don't think so.
Where's your goal now? What? you're on the view full screen there. That's as full screen as it's gonna get. You hear it all right?
That's the background.
We just wanted to get enough space.
Jimmy, I'm gonna make your life easy. Whenever you're ready, press that button. Yeah. When you're done,
Well, I was still saying set it up that he has no PowerPoint, so you don't need this screen at all.
okay, cool. Let me get rid of it.
If you want to. Everybody will be happy. And I'm sure. Now, well, you know what we want. Yeah, I know, we still love you. I don't know about right, but Alabama. Well, we need a card and come back. What part of the world does he come from? 7'7". Oh my God. When there's I can't imagine. All right, you ready for
Are you ready for showtime, sir?
Ready.
Are you ready? Ready when you're ready.
Oh,
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Just want you to holler.
I beg your pardon?
I just want you to holler.
That'll help. And oh yeah, Jimmy's got a mic. That's great.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Please stand as we begin the October 30th luncheon and meeting of the West Jacks Rotary Club. I'm Tim Johnson, this year's president. I want to welcome all of you. And while we're welcoming folks, why don't we give a warm welcome to our special guests from the Riverside Rotary. Welcome, welcome. I also want to ask our Zoom attendees if they would please mute themselves and send any questions they might have via the chat. Our invocation today will be offered by William Milne. William?
Thank you, President Tim. Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you today with thanks and gratitude and just so much appreciation for the wonderful city that we get to live in and for the wonderful city that we get to serve. Thank you for these two clubs, for all of the Rotarians who give of their time and energy and their heart to serve the needs of others. We especially thank you for this week, for the fun tradition of Florida, Georgia. We thank you for the amazing things that it does for our community. And we also thank you for our speaker today, for Sam Kouvaris, who has brought so much joy to our community for so many years with great sports and involvement. We pray for everything going on in our country right now. We pray that your blessings will be poured out upon us, and may we continue to do it and serve you for the goods of others. Amen.
Thank you, William. I know Jay Henderlight's here. Jay, would you mind coming forward and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Fellow Rotarians, please join me in pledging allegiance to the flag of our great nation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jay. Please be seated. We've got several pop-ups today. You'll notice several flyers on your table, which we're going to talk about. As we begin to discuss the pop-ups, I want to take a minute to thank our own John and Gail Runyon. You all saw my weekly memo, so you know that they cleaned up Baker Point Park during our service week by gathering 2 bags of trash, logging in 3 hours of service. Please remember, if you were serving anywhere last week, to turn in your hours to Patty, and I want to thank all of you for all that you do. I also want to invite, I think Judy's going to come up. AJ might join her. There's a couple of items on your tables, and there's some great news. Judy is our Director of Youth Services. Judy, come on up here and tell us what's going on with Rotaract and Interact.
Okay, thank you so much, President Tim. I'm really excited. I brought up my paperwork up here to show you. This is the paperwork for the certification of the Interact Club at Riverside High School. We've been working on it for 1.5 years. They have filled it out. They had to elect officers and get people to join. They have over 30 charter members. President Tim has signed it. We're sending it on to Mickey at the district level. Then our esteemed member Gigi is going to get it, be very, very happy to do it. And the club will be certified sometime in the very near future, and we'll make that announcement. But they have hit the ground running, and that's what AJ is going to tell you about.
So on your table, you'll see a flyer for Light the Night. This is the fall project for the Riverside High School Interact Club. This is a project that's actually near and dear to my heart. In 2015, I was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma. And I was treated, and thank God that, you know, I am cancer-free. But this is going to be my 20th Light the Night walk. And so I participated before I was diagnosed, because this was one of ViStar's programs when I worked for ViStar. But if you'd like to join the team just to support, or if you'd like to donate, you can just scan the QR code. Or if you would like just to be billed, you can reach out to Patty and tell her how much you'd like to donate to the Interact Light the Night Fund, and then the club can write a check on your behalf. Right, so if you'd like to just reach out and support, this is for our Interact Club. This is their very first club project for our 30 students. They're really, really excited, so I hope you support. Then I have another flyer on the table. So Allie, if you would come up.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. We are having a brunch and bubbles at AJ's house on the 23rd next month. So all your wife, your daughters, moms are invited to this brunch. It will happen again November 23rd at 11 a.m. Okay.
Yep, so your wives, girlfriends, both, just come to my house. We're gonna have a great time.
It's gonna be you and a bunch of women and a bunch of bourbon too.
And a bunch of bourbon.
All right, guys, this is so important. I'm so pleased to see what you all are doing. The Women of Rotary, a new social cohort of our club, the wives of our members, our female members, their daughters. It's really exciting. And then obviously money going to cancer research through our own Interact Club at West Jax Rotary. Now, you all know we do a service week about every 4 weeks. So this lines up perfect as a service week project that we can get behind. Really excited about what you all are doing. All right, we're in the pop-up section of our agenda. Are there any other pop-ups? Any other pop-up?
Yeah, I want to congratulate Mike Cribb, our clerk, and Drew Bisbee for tying and winning the pool. Thank you.
All right, guys. Anyone else? Any other pop-ups today? All right, yes. Get up, Stephen. What's going on? Stand up. I want people to see you.
I texted Katie Quackenbush this weekend,
Yes?
and she had returned home. She is getting better. She said her symptoms are getting better.
Yes. I'm glad to hear Katie's doing better. All right, Palmer Bell. Is Palmer in the house? Palmer, come on up here and tell us what's going on in the family of Rotary this week.
Thank you, Stephen. I had tried to call Katie yesterday and didn't get her, but so thank you for the update. For those of you who are typically not here, this is a member who ended up with a couple of different forms of meningitis. So it's nice to know she's on the mend. Any other family of Rotary news? Nothing came through this week by email. Any other family of Rotary? This week's birthdays, and actually we'll go into November because it's just around the corner anyway. So Dan Dodd is on the 27th. Rodney Butler is on the 28th. Jim Lanier, we haven't seen Jim Lanier in a while. Jim Lanier is on the 1st and Jeff Ludwig is on the 2nd. And if you find that you're one of those people who lives by, if at first I don't succeed, you may not want to take up skydiving. Just say it. Because you didn't like that, I'll just tell you that I was going to tell you a story about my experience with time travel, but you didn't like that joke either.
Y'all know he doesn't get paid for this, right? All right, we need to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians, and the person that does that is the maestro, our Sergeant at Arms, Joe Springer.
Thank you, President Tim. It is wonderful to look out and see a group this big. So much mix in it. Colors are mixed, and then the ones that get me are the ones that aren't wearing the right colors at all. It doesn't look like.
Anyway, Kevin, are you still back there? I believe you have a guest. There you go. Will you introduce your guest for us, please?
Yeah. I guess Bob is Bob. One of our all right, Rob.
Cam Baker, did your guest come in?
Yeah, Zach East with, this is Zach Munford, but he's with, Riverside.
Very good. I don't know if anyone else came in from the Riverside Club, the Morning Club. If y'all have other guests here, we'd love to know who they are. And if not, then I'm just gonna turn it back over to you, Mr. President.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right, guys, this is the time you all have been waiting for. I'm gonna bring past President Jimmy Kelly up, or Jimmy, you can do it from where you're seated. People recognize you as the Chairman Emeritus of the Table of Sin.
Thank you.
Yes. And you're gonna introduce today's luncheon speaker.
These microphones and I never did get along real well. I was sitting in the den this morning and I was jotting notes and Cindy said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting a couple of notes down for Sam." She said, "What are you putting notes down for Sam? You've only known each other about 35 or 40 years. And y'all know each other well." But I said, "Well, you know, I don't have a teleprompter, but I still want to write a note down just to be sure." Sam comes to us by the way of Baltimore about what, 1980, around that time?
81.
81. And he played football at University of Maryland, got his degree there, and then went into the broadcasting business. And I will tell you, when I was asked to bring a speaker today for this occasion, I didn't even have to think. Sam was automatically first on my list, always is. He has got a mind for sports like I've never seen. Back in the day, they used to have a segment on his TV show, the sports section, and it was Stump Sam. And I'll bet you if I heard Sam answer 100 questions, they stumped him maybe twice. And it was some kind of weird stuff, soccer or something, but he knew the answer to everything. And I just marveled. But Sam is active in the community. He and I got to be very close when I was at Dreams Come True, and we had our annual golf tournament that was the Sam Kouvaris tournament for Dreams Come True. He put his name with that, and he put his money where his mouth was. He did a great job of helping us raise money. He's a great friend. His wife, Linda, been married for how many?
45 years.
Nice. I still got you by 6. But at any rate, he's got 3 children. And then they're scattered around. Grandchildren? 5. So please, without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today, Mr. Sam Kouvaris.
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm gonna wait for Jimmy to get down because it might take a minute. But Jimmy and I have had a lot in common because he's had his health challenges, and I always call him because in the last 4 years, I've had both knees and both hips replaced. No.
We got you.
I mean, you want to move that over there? That's fine. I'm not gonna stand all the way up there when you guys are right here. The kind of a snotty thing I said, isn't it? Anyway, so Jimmy and I talk often. Like I said, in the last 4 years, I've had both hips and both knees replaced, and you know, it takes a while for your body to kind of get back to that. Many of you met my dad when we walked in, the original Sam Kouvaris, actually. If you're doing the math in your head, yes, I'll be 70 this year, and my dad will be 92 in February. So why is that? Good genes, obviously. Some of you may have followed that Blue Zones thing. My father is from the island of Ikaria, which is halfway between Greece and Turkey, and it's been identified as one of the places on earth where people live an inordinately long lives. It's kind of amazing when we go there, and we visited there many times, to see so many people who are over 100 and they're still doing, daily work. And that's one of the reasons that they've identified that those people have a purpose. They do things. They get up every day. They have a lot of social interactions, which is an important part of that. It's great to be back here with you all, even though this is a whole different spot. Of course, for years over at the Yacht Club, and I mean for years and years and years over at the Holodome, where I always, whenever I was there, I'd always see Jimmy. Lou would tell a terrible joke, and Bill Gay would be sitting in the back, right? So I feel like I know so many of you and have had enjoyed so many good times with you. So thank you. And of course, my relationship with Jimmy for such a long time, and one of my closest relationships is now with Jeff Ludwig, who we've become such good friends in the last 15 years. And that was fostered out of a meeting right here at the Westside Rotary. So thanks. Got something written down here. And I just, many of you know that I stopped using a teleprompter in 1983 so I could ad lib the sports and give better energy to it. But I do have something written down here. The future of sports in Jacksonville appears robust, with several developments indicating a commitment to enhancing the city's sports infrastructure and community engagement. The Stadium of the Future project, involving a significant investment shared between the city and the Jacksonville Jaguars, underscores a long-term vision to not only retain but also elevate the NFL team's presence, promising economic and community benefits through enhanced stadium use for various events beyond football. Additionally, the addition of soccer and many other sports for both men's and women reflects a growing sports diversity, fostering a potential for broader fan bases and youth development in soccer. Those, combined with the ongoing discussions about the, and I will say Georgia-Florida game, since they currently have won the game, even though two of my kids went to Florida and they yell at me every time I say that, suggests Jacksonville has strategically positioned itself as a sports hub, balancing tradition with modern sports entertainment demands. Jacksonville has a passion for sports, pointing towards a future where sports continue to play a pivotal role in Jacksonville's cultural and economic landscape. So that all seems to make sense, right? It's pretty good. Right before I left the house, I asked AI to write me a paragraph about the future of sports in Jacksonville. 2 seconds later, that's what it printed out. Okay. Now, the particular AI I used was Elon Musk's on X. It's called Grok, I think. But there's ChatGPT, there's OpenAI, there's all kinds of stuff. Literally, my dad was sitting there. I was on my computer and I said, write me a paragraph about the future of sports in Jacksonville. 1001, 1002, boom, and it came up. So what's that tell you? If I said to you, hey, Trevor Lawrence isn't going to play Sunday, you wouldn't go to some website, or you wouldn't turn the TV or the radio on. You would pull your phone out when you left here and you type in Trevor Lawrence, right? Jaguars. And instantly Google would populate 100 stories, right? In the top 10, I can guarantee you 5 of them were written by AI. All right. So maybe more these days, but at least 5. So what are you looking for? Well, now you start scrolling, and which article are you going to read? Well, I would hope that if I wrote about it, that it says Trevor to miss Sunday's game by Sam Kouvaris. You stop and you go, oh, Sam's a trusted source, and I'll click on that and see what Sam has to say about it. So what does that mean for us as news consumers, as information consumers? It means that the amount of responsibility for getting information has now shifted from the providers of the information to the consumers of the information. It's now our job to do that. And that's not anything new. Anybody who's studied any American history knows that the terms yellow journalism and muckraker are two American terms that were brought up specifically by American journalism, particularly in the late 1800s and into the early 1900s, when William Randolph Hearst ran these papers with these phenomenal headlines, which is what you see every day now when you log on to some click. They're trying to get you to click on that. You know, when you watch a video down in the right-hand corner, there's a 5-second countdown. It says skip in 5, 4. You know why that is? If it runs for 5 seconds, that advertiser gets credit. And the platform gets credit that you watched it, even though you only watched it for 5 seconds. But they're trying to hook you with that first 5 seconds to stay on it. So as news consumers, it's become our responsibility to decide what to believe and what not to believe, what to read and what not to read, what to trust and what not to trust. And that is a brand new thing for us. We think. People go, oh, I wish we could go back to the days of Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite was a New York left-leaning socialist who kind of liked to hang out with all of his very rich friends in New York. And while he delivered the news in what appeared to be a very straightforward way, it was the way of the time. NBC did it that way, CBS did it that way. When ABC eventually got a national broadcast, they all lived in the same apartment building. They all went to the same parties. They all hung out together. And they all did things together. When cable TV came along in the 90s, and even before that in the late 70s, when we started getting super stations, started to shift the way that news and information was presented. And it started to give rise to some other ideas, which is why in the Reagan administration, they got rid of what was called the Fairness Act in broadcasting, where people, if you presented a point of view on the air, you were required to give the opposite point of view an equal amount of time. That was the rule. That was the rule, the FCC rule. Well, the Reagan administration got rid of that. So what happened? We got sports talk radio, right? All of a sudden became a thing in the starting in the 80s. If you think about that, it became a full-time thing. And in addition to that, we got political talk radio, which also became a big thing and a big moneymaker. When cable TV came around, you know, still to this day, cable TV is not encumbered by any of the rules that go along with broadcast television. They can, you know, they can cuss all they want. They don't, but they can say and run whatever they want because it's a service that you allegedly pay for. So that gave rise to a whole different group of people doing news in a very different way than ABC, NBC, CBS. Those of you old enough, the Dumont network, you know, who remember that? You remember that, Jim? Yeah, okay. So what happened was that there was a space there that was filled, obviously, by some different organizations, including Fox News, who went from non-existent in 1977 to the #1 cable channel in 1998. But why is that? Well, it's not necessarily because of their political point of view, but it does show you that there was a space there of viewers that felt like they were not being serviced by what else was being broadcast. So over the years, and I said this the last time we spoke, that, you know, Fox realized that their viewership was getting more and more conservative, so they stepped more and more to the right. CNN saw that their viewership was more and more liberal, and so they stepped more and more to the left. And so now it's created this big void in the middle. Well, why doesn't anybody fill it? Because there's no money in that. If you put money up for a network, unless you're some sort of philanthropist like Musk or Bezos or somebody who's got unlimited cash. When you put money up for news, you want your point of view presented on your newscast. Well, in the middle, that's not where the money is. The money's on one side or the other. So consequently, it's become our job as news consumers, information consumers, to figure out who we can trust, take everything kind of with a grain of salt, see as many things as you can, and then decide for yourself. That's a big responsibility because people are pretty tricky and there's some smart people in those businesses and they can say things to make you believe stuff that may not actually be true. So I would just say that every time you read something, kind of take a beat and think for a second, all right, could that possibly be written by AI? Could that have been fake? Could that have been, I mean, I don't know if you see that deep fake of Kirby making fun of that quarterback? I mean, it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen on YouTube. Kirby sitting up there and he goes, yeah, that guy's just a terrible player. I mean, he can't play at all. And, you know, he goes on and on for a full minute and you're like, and somebody sent it to me and I go, oh, this is a deep fake. I mean, this is something that somebody made up to make Kirby look, you know, like he's a terrible person. But I think it had to do with when he pushed the Mississippi State quarterback. Remember that? You know, and after the game, they asked him about it and he was like, what are you talking about? He didn't even remember doing it. And he called the guy and apologized the next day. So anyway, it's a difficult thing because so much information is right here, you know, and it's only going to become more information available as they continue to develop 5G, as Starlink continues to cover not just the US, but the world, that you're going to be able to instantly, I don't know, does anybody have Starlink? Anybody? You've installed it, right? A friend of mine put it on his boat and he'd rather go to his boat to use the internet than anything else because apparently it's so fast and so fantastic. So just be aware that that's an issue that happens. I don't know if you saw that our current mayor yesterday said that an announcement is coming soon for the Florida-Georgia game. So I would think that she might have said something different if that was a negative thing. So hopefully they're getting ready to agree that once the stadium is rebuilt, that the game will return here for another long-term contract. The Jaguars are apparently, this is what I heard Sunday, talking to some sources down there. Apparently, the Jaguars have gone ahead and decided that they're only going to not play here 1 year. They're what? Because it's going to take the stadium 2 years to be rebuilt, but apparently just 1 year. And so I don't think it's next year, but I think in 26, they're going to take half the stadium down. The stadium's going to hold about 40,000. Then the following year, they'll take the rest of it down and rebuild it. And they're going to apparently play in Orlando. There was a lot of talk that they were going to play in Gainesville, but apparently they did a survey to see where their fans are coming from. And it's something like 70 to 85% of their fans come from south of Jacksonville, whether it's Clay County, whether it's South Duval County, whether it's St. Johns County. And so whether they're driving an hour to get to downtown Jacksonville or for them an hour 45 to get to Orlando, they feel like that's going to kind of modify that. Plus, they feel like they can sell some tickets in Orlando as well. And the league would like the games to be in Orlando because that's where the Pro Bowl is currently being held and give them more of an NFL identity. And then once the stadium is rebuilt, obviously the Jaguars will come back and play their games. I think in a couple of those years too, they may play 2 home games in London and one as the visitor. And I don't know if you remember 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when they proposed playing 2 home games in London. And Mark Lamping, the president of the club, said, well, we think this is a great idea. And Shad said, I'm pretty sure fans will embrace it. And I went on the air and said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Lose 2 home games to Jacksonville.
Right.
Yeah.
Lose 2 home games here in town. Lamping called me up and he was so mad at me. And I said, well, first of all, Mark, nobody's watching TV anymore, so what do you care? I said, at least that's what you always tell me. He goes, you don't understand how much influence you have in this town. I said, maybe the problem is I actually do. I said, and you know, for you to say that that was a good idea, I said, is insulting to everybody in town. That's not a good idea. And because the thing, you know, don't ever criticize unless you have a solution. And I said, the solution is the Jaguars continue to play the game in London and stay over there and be the visitor for one game and bring another team over. Now, he said, you don't understand how it works. I said, no, actually, Mark, the problem is I've been around the league longer than you, and I know exactly how it works, okay? It used to be, and people find this fascinating, it used to be when the league started and up until about 2000, that when a visiting owner left, he left with a check from the homeowner for 40% of the gate, whatever it was. That's why for years and years, you know, Congress passed that blackout thing. You know why they passed that? Because nobody in DC was what could see games when they were at home. And so they passed that thing. Well, if the game's a sellout, it can be shown at home. And that was a 2-year sunset law from 1974 and 75. Well, that sunsetted, but the league very wisely stuck to that. And if the game was a sellout, it was shown at home. Well, that affected the NFL owners because if Wayne Weaver declared our game a sellout, then he owed 40% of a sellout gate to the visiting owner. Well, if there were only 45,000 people there, Wayne's on the back end of that equation. So around 2000, a little bit after that, the league decided that they would go to revenue sharing for the visiting gate as well. So all the visiting gate goes into a pot and it's split among all the owners. In exchange for that, the owners agreed to let the league then schedule preseason. And if you remember, the Jaguars used to play Tampa, Miami, and Atlanta every year. Why is that? Well, it cut down on travel costs, you know, because they get there and they come back, and it's not this big production. So it cut down on the expenses for the preseason. Now the league runs it. They're down to 3 preseason games. Very soon it's going to be 2, and it's going to be an 18-game regular season as well, where they probably have 2 buys during the year. So you know, all that stuff is all in the works, but look for that, and look for the announcement of a new contract for the Florida-Georgia, Georgia-Florida game coming up for when the stadium is up and fully functional in those 2 or maybe even 3 years that it's not here. They'll do like they did in, what was that, 93, 94? And play in Gainesville and play in Athens. You know, I was in Athens for that game. And Florida's just beating the pants off of Georgia, just crushed, you know. And so stadium's pretty much empty toward the end of the game. And game ends, and I'm standing out by the buses, and Steve Spurrier walks by, and you know, I've known him half my life, maybe more. And I look at him and I said, you know, shook his hand. I said, congratulations. But you know, that thing that you did at the end of the game, that is the single most unsportsmanlike thing I've ever seen. He goes, what do you mean? I said, actually, Jimmy, I played at Clemson. Okay. I played at Clemson, transferred to Maryland, graduated from there. But I said, I played with Lawson Holland, who was the quarterback's coach at Clemson. Lawson was second or third string, and I was bench warmer. But I said, Lawson came over there and said to you, hey, coach, nobody's ever hung half 100 on him here in between the hedges. I said, the first thing you said was timeout. I said, there was like a minute to play. You're up like 46-3 or something. I said, then to add insult to injury, you run a flea flicker for a touchdown. I said, easily the most unsportsmanlike thing I've ever seen. And he looks at me and he goes, Sammy, they'll get over it. He gets on the bus. I was like, I get it. You know, I mean, I play golf with him a lot and, you know, spent a lot of time with him. And if he's your coach, I mean, he couldn't be better. If he's not your coach, you just freaking hate his guts, you know, and I can see why. But obviously a tremendously storied rivalry. In Spurrier's time at Florida, I think they only lost to Georgia once, right? One time.
Yep.
97, right? I can remember the 84 game, back when people watched TV. It was a big deal for me to make a prediction the night before about who was going to win the game. Florida's ranked #1 in the country. I'm all fired up. You know, I go, here's what's going to happen. We make this stupid big production about my prediction. Florida's going to win the game. I go to the game, get there 3 hours beforehand. We're doing a live thing. Then we're off the air and Georgia comes on the field and they are snorting fire. Florida comes on the field and they are dancing the Macarena. And I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. In fact, they are. And I called the station. I said, is there any way we can run a little crawl that says Sam changes his pick? Georgia's going to kill these guys. And right, 24/7, I think, something was the final. It wasn't, you know, Georgia did do that. But you know, we really have been fortunate here. I mean, if you think about the coaches that, of course, when Vince was at Georgia, I always thought his most famous line was when they were playing Vanderbilt. He said, you know, they got a really good long snapper. I was like, Vince, come on, really? And of course, Bobby was over there and Steve got all mad at him at the Sugar Bowl where he said, you know, we play to the whistle. And Bobby said, well, boys, you know, we play to the echo of the whistle. And of course, Schnellenberger was down there in Miami. And if you've ever seen a and of course, Jimmy Johnson was there as well. But if you've ever seen any documentary on how Miami rose to power, they, in essence, they had very little budget for their football team. They drew a line from Orlando south, and they called it the state of Miami. And they said, we're going to win every recruiting battle in this area. And they did. And you look at all the guys that went there. Michael Irvin went to St. Thomas Aquinas, you know, and you look at all the different guys who went to Miami. They were all recruited from the state of Florida. And that's, you know, that's what changed. If you win the recruiting battle in the state of Florida, you got a good chance to compete nationally because of the quality of football that's played here in high school, the quality of athlete that's here. I mean, you look at a guy like Fred Taylor. I mean, there's a guy who literally grew up in Belglade in a house with dirt floors. And his uncle used to send him out back to chase a chicken in order to work on his speed, quickness, and lateral movement. And when he started catching the chicken, his uncle brought a rabbit over and made him chase that. So, I mean, you know, you get those kinds of athletes, which is why for a long time, all those athletes stayed in the state. And then in the 70s, the NCAA started limiting the number of scholarships you could give out. Well, when you can only give at the time, like in the late 70s, 35 scholarships. Well, I mean, that's only 105 blue chip guys. Well, there's 150 blue chip guys who are playing football in the state of Florida, which means there's 45 guys that have to go elsewhere. So a guy like Derek Brown, who went to Merritt Island, who was the #1 tight end in the country, ended up at Notre Dame. That, you know, certain guys ended up at Michigan. Some guys, regrettably, ended up at Ohio State. I did love it when Spurrier used to call Ohio State runner-up U. You know, that's runner-up U over there. Because Florida beat him in the basketball and in the football championship. I did love it. I thought that was hilarious. So, you know, just such a tremendous rivalry that I was watching the Texas-Oklahoma game the other day, and you could see part of it was burnt orange and part of it was red, and it was fun to watch. And I said, you know, it just didn't have the same energy that this game has. well, has had generally until about halftime recently. So it'll be interesting to see what happens Saturday. Florida's had some recent success that people didn't expect. And I was actually looking at the at the scores in the last 15 years. And Florida's won 3 or 4 times that people don't remember. I mean, Gator fans, of which my daughter, my oldest daughter and my son, both are Florida grads. My son-in-law, both of my son-in-laws are Florida grads. My middle daughter wanted to cost me the maximum, so she went to a private school in the Northeast, whatever it was. And then when she decided to be a lawyer, I said, listen, you know, Florida and Florida State are tremendous law schools ranked in the top 50. And she said, I think I'm going to go to Miami. And I said, why is that? And I'm pretty sure she said, because it's the most expensive law school in the state. Man, when she and my son graduated, I looked at my wife and I said, you know, I actually make money. We actually have, at the time when she went to Amherst, it was the most expensive undergrad in America. And she had transferred from NYU, which was second. So you know that, right? Yeah. So, and my son was at Bowles. And so between the two of them, I mean, a lot of cash was going out. And luckily a few years later when they graduated, but as Jimmy mentioned, 3 children, 5 grandchildren. And we moved to Ponte Vedra about it'll be 3 years ago. And after living in Mandarin, in fact, if you step out on the dock here, you could see where I lived. I lived in the front yard of the guy who lived on Mandarin Point. You know, he paid the taxes and I had a 50-foot view. Well, I started with a 50-foot view. And then once I got done with my chainsaw, I had a 150-foot view. And after the most recent hurricanes, I went in my garage and I'm looking around and I was like, I have a very serious chainsaw. I have a Husqvarna Rancher 450. I was like, I live in Ponte Vedra. Why do I have that? My wife said, because you used to live in Mandarin and just to get out of your street when the hurricanes came by, you needed that. I said, that's true. So anyway, the Jaguars are a very talented team, very, very talented team. Regrettably, they're also a bad team. And that comes from, and anybody who's played any sport at any time or even in business, they lack a level of toughness that is maybe the most damning thing that you could say. Actually, the most damning thing I heard was anonymously another general manager in the league was watching tape of the Jaguars and said, their offensive line plays like they can't wait for the play to be over. I was like, oh God, that is so bad. But when you look at the decisions that they've made personnel-wise, they've got very talented players. But I had lunch with Lonnie Martz the other day, and many of you remember Lonnie played on the 99 team, and I saw Paul Posluszny at the stadium on Sunday, and I wrote an article I still occasionally write for Sam Sportsline about how the Jaguars are so soft. I said, when that hole would open in the middle of the 3rd quarter, I said, Lonnie Martz would stand in the hole. We don't have anybody who does that now. They stand here and hope to tackle the guy as he goes by. I said, but Lonnie, and I had lunch with him, I told Lonnie this story. I said, you'd stand in the hole. I said, and you told me once you knew it was going to hurt. And Paul said to me on Sunday, he goes, yeah. He goes, you know, we're the knuckleheads and we stand in the hole and we know it's going to hurt, but the object is to make it hurt worse for that guy. And I was like, we have 0 guys on our team like that, right? Maybe Dewey Wingard, who may be back this week. And that's the key. You can have all the 1st and 2nd round picks that you want, sign all the high-end free agents you want. You need some 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks who didn't only make it on talent, who made it because they love to play football and because they want to mix it up. Because if you watch any professional game, and it usually doesn't happen in college, any professional game, about 2 minutes left in the 3rd quarter, one team decides they're sick of getting hit like that. And the game kind of plays itself out. And we have 0 guys like that. And well, why is that? I'd like to just blame Trent Baalke because I really like Doug Peterson. But I think he and Peterson and Baalke have always told us that it's a collaboration in terms of building the roster and putting guys together. Well, then when Calais Campbell came here 2 years ago and wanted to come back after By the way, we traded him to Baltimore while he was the reigning Walter Payton Man of the Year. They've done a lot of dumb things down there, but I mean, that was really stupid. And I mean, that guy, I begged him to live in Jacksonville when he came back, when his career was over. I said, Clay, you have no idea the impact somebody like you can have on this community and the respect that you have and how you can bring so many people together. Because as you all know, our community is divided by roads and rivers. You know, you live on that side of the river, this side, that side of I-10, this side, that side of 95 or this side. I mean, I said, you could do so much. And he said, well, testament to him. The guys in Denver asked me that. The guys in Arizona asked me that. And the guys in Baltimore asked me that too. But when he came here and said, I want to come back, reportedly, Trent Baalke looked at him and said, why are you here? Well, why am I here? Because I'm going to play for the Falcons this year. And by the way, next year when I go to play for the Dolphins, I'm going to wreck your offense in the beginning of the game. That's why, which is what happened. So, but the guy's impact in the locker room, on the sidelines, who's the fourth string tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Do you have any idea? Right. No idea, right? He's a developmental guy. You don't need to know. He won't be on the team next year. Who's the fourth string tight end for the Chicago Bears? Mercedes Lewis. In his 19th year in the league. Well, he's certainly not there because he can outrun anybody or catch a pass or whatever. But the Bears management understands that you need a guy like that in your locker room who shows these guys how to act, shows them how to practice, shows them on the sidelines how to respond when things go bad. If you remember when the Jaguars were in London, the very first game against the Chicago Bears, the game that was in Tottenham, which by the way is a beautiful, fantastic stadium, which probably, if you read anything about the Tottenham Stadium, our stadium is going to kind of be like that. Wembley is a much bigger stadium. It holds 90,000. And that's why Shad likes to play the home game there, because there's more money. And he can entertain more people, which he does on the continent, a lot of his clients on the continent. It's the whole reason he bought Fulham, by the way. But first play of the second half against the Bears, Trevor drops back, throws a beautiful pass to Evan Ingram, catches the ball, takes 3 steps down. As he's going down, the guy punches the ball out. They turn the ball over right there. Ingram, who was a first-round pick, right? Signed as a free agent with the Jaguars, most productive receiver we've had since he joined the team, gets up, goes over and sits on the bench and does this. Right? What he should have done, a real leader, walks over, throws his helmet, looks at those guys and says, listen, that's on me and that's not happening again. And we're not losing this effing game, okay? That changes the aspect of what happens on the sideline. They have 0 guys who do that. And you've been on teams, you've been in meetings where everybody's just a sheep. And right now the Jaguars are that. Well, people say, well, why isn't it Trevor? Well, you know what? The early Jaguars had that and it wasn't Mark. It was Tony, right? It was Baselli. I mean, can you imagine anybody on this team looking at a defensive end and waving him down to the other side of the field like Tony did, you know, on that Monday night game against Miami? I mean, I said the other day to one of the guys down there, I said, who on this team, if you were his age and his size, would you not want to fight? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I can name 15 guys in the past. I said, Leon Searcy, he'd go medieval on you right away. I mean, almost immediately, you know. Gary Walker, I don't want any part of that guy. You know, even though if I was his size and his age, you know, even a guy like Tom McManus, absolutely not. You know, this team, not a single guy who scares me. Nobody scares me, you know. And I'm, like I said, I'm going to be 70. So I just think it's a thing about football that's different than most every other sport. That you've got to have some guys on your team who are like that, who can play, who love to play, who want to mix it up. and aren't just interested in figuring out what their next touchdown dance is going to be. So anyway, I do think our future is bright. I have told almost every city council president to hook their wagon to a shot and let's go, because there's not a bunch of billionaires walking around willing to invest in our city. And you know, while not every idea he has is great, I do think that his interest in downtown and what it can be is a very laudable thing. And I think the stadium, what he'd like to do, and you've seen parts of it, he'd like to start at the stadium and march west, you know, and just revitalize downtown. The whole Emerald Necklace thing, the Emerald Trail, he'd like to just revitalize downtown, starting from the west. The fact that, you know, we're going to have, and almost every great downtown metropolitan community has some sort of educational facility in it. And the fact that we're about to get that, I think, is a giant step in the right direction. So
Sam, do you have time for a few questions?
I didn't want to take up all your time, but whatever you
Got one
like.
right here.
Yeah.
So cutting to the chase, what's your prediction for Saturday?
And could I alternate? George is too good for Florida, although Florida has had some recent success, and I really like Langway. I mean, obviously he's shown flashes of what he can be long term, and you know, I don't know how long he stays there, but you know, the thing about Florida is that Billy went there, and they're always going to have skilled players because there's so many of them and want to play at Florida. But you think back to the early '80s. What did the Gator fans remember? The Great Wall of Florida, right? I mean, you know, those were teams that were built on that. Those teams that that criminal Urban Meyer had. I mean, they were. You look at the guys that they had up front on those teams, the Pouncey brothers. I mean, you know, we're talking about a whole different ballgame with what Billy was left with when Dan left, because Dan was very interested in offense and very interested in kind of, you know, scoring a lot of points. So
Sam,
I reserve the right to change my mind.
over your 40+ years in Jacksonville, you have been a part of so many big sporting moments in Jacksonville, between the arrival of the Jaguars, which I know you had a huge part in with Wayne, and then the Super Bowl, the playoffs. Is there one memory in Jacksonville, a sporting event, that stands out above the best for your experiences?
It was pretty cool to see the Super Bowl in your hometown. All right, that's pretty cool. I wasn't here because they left me in Denver. But the night 40,000 people spontaneously showed up at the stadium after the Jaguars beat the Broncos to go to the AFC Championship game.
The first playoff.
But in '96 was just, I mean, that's just an amazing kind of thing that doesn't happen anymore. You know, I mean, those things don't happen. And the Jaguars win that game, if you remember, it was a night game. And I'm on the rooftop of the TV station that we were working with there, and it was 6 below. And I'm standing out there, and we're doing we've decided we're going to stay on the air the entire time while they fly home. So, and I'm going to anchor it, right? And so I'm standing out there, and I'm telling you, it's freezing ass cold. I mean, it's
6 below.
Sorry, but it's plenty cold. And you know, we're vamping and talking and running highlights of the game, and now all of a sudden we're talking to JSO, and we get these reports that, you know, there's a traffic jam downtown. Well, it's midnight. So JSO is like, oh, all these people are showing up at the stadium. So, I mean, now it's become a story. And now we got something. So we send reporters down there. We got people live at the stadium. We're talking to, you know, different people about what's going on. We finally convince, I'm trying to think of the guy who ran the stadium at the time, to turn the lights on and open the stadium. Because remember, there was talk that they were not going to let anybody in. And so we convinced them to do that. And, you know, you go in there, all of a sudden there's 40,000 people. And I'm standing there on the roof. And actually my boss, they left me out there to anchor that. Tom Wills was supposed to fly back, with somebody, their plane had a flat tire. So I'm kind of, stuck with that. And I just remember my boss sticking his head out and he goes, you want to come in? You look frozen. And I looked at him and I said, and it's 96, I'm pretty young and the team's new and we're all pumped up. And I said, let me ask you something. Our team's going to the AFC Championship game next week in our second year, and I'm gonna come inside because I'm cold. I mean, it's like Anthony Richardson last week saying, I need to come out of the game because I'm tired.
Yeah.
I tell you what, come out of the game and leave the stadium. How's that? In fact, they benched him, this week. They said, yeah, that's good. And when he was at Florida, I mean, I saw him throw a ball 70 yards flat footed. I mean, he's liable to throw it to me or you while we're in this room. So, but he can, he's an unbelievable athlete, but I need to come out because I'm tired. By the way, did you see Donovan McNabb throw up on the field trying to win the game here, against the Patriots? But, I guess it's time for me to go, but,
You began your talk with that AI thing and it painted a picture of what Jacksonville's sports venue could be.
Right.
And at the end, you talked about being in London.
Right.
Could you share with us your favorite sports venue, the place that you love to broadcast from?
Camden Yards in Baltimore, because I grew up there, would be, just a great place. In 1983, I was at Veterans Station in Philadelphia when the Orioles won the World Series. I can tell you as a reporter, there's nothing like watching your hometown team, the only team that I'm still a fan of, win on somebody else's field. That's pretty good. And particularly when Pete Rose is all mad and all that. But to give you a little perspective, right? I grew up in Baltimore. My grandfather emigrated from Greece. And my dad grew up there as well. The Jaguars have been in Jacksonville longer than the Colts were in Baltimore.
Wow.
Okay.
I hadn't heard that statistic.
So when you look at that kind of perspective,
Right.
I mean, this is the 30th year that they've been here. I mean, the Colts left Baltimore in 1984. And they've been in Indianapolis, obviously, since then. But when I think of the Colts and when many people think of the Colts, it's still the Baltimore Colts. And then you're like, okay, yeah, Johnny Unitas and Raymond Berry and Jimmy Orr and that whole gang.
Sure.
But the Jaguars have been here longer than the Colts were in Baltimore.
Tell me something. Do great teams make great venues?
Not necessarily, because nobody liked playing at Three Rivers and nobody even liked going there. I'm telling you.
I'm telling you. Don't start with that.
Let me give you a quick Three Rivers story, right?
Did you see Pittsburgh on Monday night?
I did.
It was the prettiest place you've ever seen.
Yeah, right.
You're in Jacksonville.
That's Heinz Field. That's Heinz Field, okay?
It's a great team.
By the way, the last time the Jaguars played there was in the playoffs and you got crunched.
You know what?
With Blake Bortles as a.
I've been here 7 years.
Who threw five.
Everybody I meet tells that same damn story.
5 touchdowns.
Win a game. You gotta go back to 97 to win a game. Win a game.
You're right. Well, that's true. But
You remember the question?
here's the thing about
Great teams, great venues.
here's the thing about Three Rivers real quick. Fred Taylor runs for 268 yards
Mhm.
against the Steelers, and I'm on the field. And as I'm walking off the field, I'm walking with one of the players who grabs me and pulls me next to him and says, "Walk with me." I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Because I'll leave my helmet on and they won't throw stuff at me." He goes, "But if you walk by yourself, they'll throw everything they got at you." The Steelers have great fans, as I always have heard people say. Steeler fans would eat peanut butter and jelly before they gave up their season.
That's exactly right.
They certainly would. But great venues and great teams. As much as I hate the Yankees, Yankee Stadium, when you go there to see them play, and they're a great team. It's an electric atmosphere. You probably saw some of that last night. But of course, when I was growing up, the Yankees and the Red Sox were irrelevant. You know, the Orioles from 1983, from 1966 to 1986 were the winningest franchise in all of sports at the time. So, but I think they can make them. I think the Raiders made Oakland Coliseum kind of storied, although it was a dome. But that was part of their personality,
Exactly.
right? It was that.
It was like a coliseum.
Yeah, it was
They
that.
were ruthless.
So in some cases, yes. And in other cases, it's fairly sterile. And regrettably, our stadium has a reputation of being kind of a sterile place to play. You know, which hopefully that'll change and it's because it's how it's built, part of it. But hopefully that'll change as we go forward.
One more time for Sam. All right, Rotarians, we're at the end of our luncheon meeting for the day. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my fellow president, the president of the Riverside Rotary, Mr. Eric Sherman. Stand up, Eric. Let everybody stand. He's done a phenomenal job. We got some phenomenal things that we're going to do together. We're planning on a joint breakfast after the new year. So our club will take its Saturday or take its Wednesday afternoon lunch and make it a Wednesday breakfast. And we're just excited. We're doing the Alhambra event. We're going to promote that to all of Area 6. We're excited about Riverside joining us for that fundraiser in the spring. So please join me. I want to thank our banquet manager, Tiffany, our service staff at Timaquana. Mike Crumpler was our greeter today. $1 Million Milne. He and Jay and Palmer were on the agenda. And then one more time for Sam, everybody. Okay, so November 6th, we'll have a kickoff of our Rotary Foundation month. And we got some magic coming. We got a great message from our Vocational Avenues Director, the Reverend Mark Eldridge. And on the 13th of November, we'll welcome past District Governor Rich and Marie Turnbull, and they're going to continue our discussion about the Rotary Foundation. All right, as we wrap up, we've got one more duty, and that will be performed by Steve Rowland. Steve, would you join us in the four-way test of the things that we think, say, and do?
All right, the four-way test, everyone. Is it the truth?
Third. Will that good better friendships? Third.
All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week. Let's get out there and make some magic. Take care.